One large part of illness perceptions is our ability to recognize symptoms. That is, if we never realize that our health has taken a hit, we will never appreciate that we may be experiencing illness. Individual differences such as neuroticism and negative affect may play a large role in these individual differences. Just as neurotic individuals are more likely to appraise situations as stressful, neurotic individuals have greater attentiveness to negative physical changes. This may result in an overattention to bodily symptoms known as hypochondriasis. Hypochondriacs are often known for observing symptoms that don't exist or concluding that minor symptoms are indicative of something more severe, leading to heightened stress. However, there is a silver lining in that while hypochondriacs are less accurate in their assessments, they are also much more likely to catch problems when they do arise. Momentary stress and emotions may also affect how we recognize symptoms, with more stressed individuals perceiving themselves as more vulnerable to illness. To be fair, research on psychoneuroimmunology supports this perspective. However, on the other hand, people experiencing more positive moods generally tend to report fewer illnesses. It's important, however, to distinguish between reporting an illness and actually being sick. That is, happy people might still be sick, but they are caught up in the positive emotions and don't even notice it. Situational factors also play a role, in that people are more likely to notice their ailments when there are less distractions. Additionally, being exposed to greater information about potential ailments can also increase illness perceptions. For instance, researchers discovered a phenomenon whereby medical students frequently report experiencing the symptoms of a disease that they are studying. This condition is associated with the fear of contracting the disease in question. And there's actually a similar phenomenon in psychology students taking abnormal psychology and self-diagnosing themselves. Once we notice the symptoms, we then need to interpret their significance. For one, prior experience and exposure to particular illnesses significantly affect our interpretation. On the one hand, prior exposure to illnesses that have had poor results or detrimental effects can increase our wariness. For instance, people who know someone with cancer or who have experienced issues with cancer in their own past are more likely to get screened and take medical precautions. On the other hand, experience with an illness that was less severe than expected may result in increased disregard. For instance, people who have had the flu and report it being not that bad are less likely to get flu shots in the future. This effect goes beyond illness as well. Students who report riding in cars with drunk drivers and making it home safely are more likely to drink and drive themselves, whereas those who have been in accidents with drunk drivers are less likely. The past experience informs our future behavior and perceptions. We also place a great deal of value on our expectations of what illness we likely have. This can lead to confirmation bias as we register the symptoms that match our assumptions and ignore those that don't. This is why WebMD and other websites that enable self-diagnosis are so powerful. You get a headache, type it into WebMD, and it pumps out a brain-eating amoeba as an option, and then we have a panic attack. However, while severe headaches are in fact a symptom of some amoebic infections, our self-diagnosis ignores all the myriad potential diagnoses associated with headaches, as well as symptoms of brain amoebas that we are not currently experiencing. These expectations also ignore context and base rate. Where would we have gotten infected? And what are the chances of being infected at all? The simplest answer is often the most correct, and instead we need to observe all of the symptoms to triangulate which illness we are experiencing. This can be particularly challenging, though, when experiencing an unfamiliar symptom, such as burning sensations or aches where we have never felt them, which then occupy our attention. For instance, if you have never felt significant pain in your abdomen, but then suddenly feel something, you may be quicker to interpret the symptoms as signifying something bad, such as maybe appendicitis. In fact, pain is the number one predictor of whether people will seek out medical help, particularly if the pain is novel or affects valued body parts. Pain in the head, chest, or genitals are much more likely to result in medical help seeking than pain in limbs. How we interpret these symptoms can also affect our coping strategies, which in turn influence outcomes. For example, high morbidity diagnoses such as cancer and heart disease are associated with high emotional responses, as well as low public understanding of the disease, which may influence whether people pursue medical help versus refuse to acknowledge the potential of that diagnosis. That is, maybe they experience some sort of denial or other defense mechanism. The common sense model of illness theorizes that our decision of how to cope stem from our common understanding of a specific illness and its symptoms, as well as our emotional responses to those symptoms. This includes people's ability to label the specific illness, knowledge of how the illness will last, causes and consequences of the illness, whether they believe there is an available cure, and how well they can coherently understand all of these factors. The relationship between symptom interpretations, illness perceptions, emotional responses, and coping responses are all bidirectional, with constant dynamic changes to each as the illness and evaluations change. The common sense model of illness then posits that the coping response eventually dictates an individual's propensity to seek out medical aid and receive treatment, which is the topic of the next video. So let's start off with a question.